To wrap up in the Conrad Murray trial.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take the mid-afternoon break.
The fate of Dr. Murray now in the hands of the jurors who will begin their deliberations tomorrow morning.
Tonight, highlights from the courtroom as attorneys make their final case.
And Hal Eisner and his team of legal experts break down how attorneys on both sides did. And attorney Anthony Falangetti joins us in studio with his take on today's courtroom drama. Those closing arguments from both sides, highly spirited. Here is Deputy District Attorney David Walgren for the prosecution.
Now, what this is fundamentally about is trust. Trust between a doctor and a patient. This hallowed relationship, this special, historic relationship where a patient relies on a doctor's best medical judgment, where a doctor is assumed and is entrusted to provide the best medical care, to do no harm. Conrad Murray violated that sacred trust each and every day. Propofol is not utilized in a bedroom. No one had ever heard of propofol being used in a bedroom ever until Conrad Murray did it to Michael Jackson. It is gross negligence, and it is a direct cause of Michael Jackson's death. For Michael's children, this case will go on forever because they do not have a father.
The defense, meanwhile, using everything in the book to plant a reasonable doubt into jurors' minds. The other strategy, convincing them that Michael Jackson was his own worst enemy.
The prosecution has to show that Dr. Murray actually killed Michael Jackson. You get up here on the stand, Steinberg and Kamengar, and they tell you Dr. Murray performed substandard CPR. And what do they base it on? Because Dr. Murray gave CPR on the bed. That's it. Why is it that everything Dr. Murray did, you know, he did wrong things. We told you that. But why is it that every single thing Dr. Murray did has to be a standard deviation from the standard of care? Ask yourself that. Because now you know from Dr. Schaefer and Dr. White that Michael Jackson didn't just die of propofol. He died from a combination of propofol and a load of lorazepam. Because the propofol alone, Dr. Schaefer told you, wouldn't have killed him. They want you to convict Dr. Murray for the actions of Michael Jackson. They just don't want to tell you that.
All right, joining us now, Phil Schuman with former prosecutor Anthony Falangetti. All right, score the final arguments here.
I give the prosecution about an 8, 8.5, defense about a 6.
Because?
I don't think the defense had done enough during the evidence portion of the trial. They certainly didn't do enough during closing argument. I don't think that they were able to overcome the core elements of the people's case, especially not in closing argument.
But I'm thinking only an 8.5 for prosecution, not a 10?
Well, I think the prosecution did what it had to do. I think it was a well-crafted argument, especially the opening argument, which was well-scripted. The PowerPoint was great. They did a good job. I don't know if it was a stellar job, but certainly in light of the evidence they had, I think it was far too much for the defense to overcome.
Phil?
I agree. I mean, it wasn't even close. Walgren destroyed the defense all day, and they had the benefit of having the last word, and Chernoff was weak. I mean, he made a couple of good points about the CPR, about 911, but those are elements that they can convict without those.
Admitting that Dr. Murray had done something wrong in his closing arguments, I mean, it seems to me that he's trying to appeal to the softer side of the jury, saying, look, yeah, we get it, we understand, but is this negligence? Is this something to convict the man on?
Well, and keep it, you know, we have to be clear on this. The legal standard is gross negligence, not negligence. So when we talk about a deviation from the standard of care, that could happen and he still not be criminally liable. He could be civilly liable, but not criminally liable. And that's the distinction they're trying to play upon.
Right.
But what we're missing in the defense's argument is this. The DA's argument was powerful in a core respect, which was, remember, he led this case off by saying, the children of Michael Jackson will feel the consequences of Dr. Murray's actions for the rest of their life because they lost a father. Remember, that's the most powerful pull. He set that emotional tag on the case, and everything from there is, ladies and gentlemen, I'm giving you a reason to vote guilty, a cause to vote guilty. The evidence, you just track it. The defense never did anything to dispel that. So from the jury standpoint, if you want to convict because this man took Michael Jackson's life, you're going to say any deviation's enough.
But let me ask you a question just on a point of law, and there seems to be a dispute over that between the two sides. Do they have to prove for criminal negligence that he killed him through the drip, or is it enough that he provided the propofol, as the prosecution claims, and that even if they buy the defense theory that Michael injected himself, that Murray's still criminally negligent?
Well, I think what the DA tried to establish for the jury, and it's going to be up to them to decide that ultimate question. I don't think there's a clear
Is that a legal question or not?
No, I don't think there's a clear standard, say, legally
confusing
for that. And will that help the defense? I doubt. I think they've given the jury a lot of reasons to convict, whether it was the administering of the propofol itself or whether it was the gross negligence after the fact and his failure to remedy the situation when Michael Jackson's body and his life was in distress. But I think the core of the defense case is if Michael Jackson was a substantial cause for his own death, then all the negligence or failures on the standard of care afterward shouldn't be the cause to hold Mr. or Dr. Conrad liable. But you know, I don't think they did enough to show that. I don't think they did enough to overcome it.
That's what Chernoff said, that Dr. Murray shouldn't be held responsible for Michael Jackson's actions. So we could see an acquittal with jurors coming out and saying, hey, Michael may have done it himself, not Dr. Murray's fault.
Yeah, I do think, though, the core problem with that is that the power, and let me say this, we can outline through a transcript what evidence a juror could rely on to vote to acquit. The problem is the compelling nature of the evidence. And the defense's position in the evidence wasn't compelling enough. The position in their argument wasn't compelling enough. Their opportunity to turn that tide and to do something powerful, to have a compelling moment for those jurors to grab on to the acquittal, was lost when Dr. Murray didn't take the stand. I thought that was their only hope to do it. After all the evidence was done, the defense's evidence wasn't good enough.
You just need one person to express doubt, correct?
You need one person who feels that doubt strongly enough to survive deliberations with the others.
And the defense, you always hear the defense doesn't have to prove anything.
Well, they don't have to prove anything. That's the standard of law. But at the end of the day, those jurors, the compelling evidence will drive their deliberations. Their emotions will drive it. And I don't think, listen, I thought going in after Conrad Murray didn't testify, I basically viewed if Mr. Chernoff, he had to be the most charismatic, compelling orator ever seen in a courtroom to overcome that, to get 12 jurors to vote not guilty.
I grant you the fact that Conrad Murray maybe could have saved himself if he does get convicted. But this case early on for the defense was not a good case. I mean, from all observers that we've talked to, that they had a chance early to object, to get in the way of the prosecution's case, and they just didn't do it.
Well, certainly early on, I think the defense throughout the case made mistakes. They were also hurt a little bit by the judge's ruling. Remember, a core element of their case, that Michael Jackson took his own life because of his need for the drugs. A lot of that prior history of use wiped clean and not admissible. So that hurt them. They lost some points by failing to object. I think there were some key points along the way that maybe if they had fought a little harder. But at the end, Dave Walgren pummeled Dr. Murray, and there was points in time when he was talking about the consciousness of guilt of the doctor. Yeah. That's why he did not tell the paramedics about the propofol. That's why the emergency doctors didn't know about the propofol, because he felt guilty. Guess what? Powerful, powerful evidence about him, and Dr. Murray never took the stand to explain that conduct. Right. So there was no explanation for those jurors other than bad motives by the doctor.
The prosecution had so many points calling what Conrad Murray did an obscene experiment. But here's my question, and this may seem really frivolous, but how much plays into it here? The power of the attorney, the likability of the attorney. I mean, David Walgren has fan pages now on the internet. He's kind of an attractive, he speaks very well. Does that really play into the jurors' minds?
Well, certainly, if you want to win a trial, the jurors have to like you. If the jurors are repulsed by you as a lawyer, they're going to take that out on your side, ultimately. But I think, look, Dave Walgren has the advantage that he's out there prosecuting the man that killed Michael Jackson. So if you're a Michael Jackson fan, you're a Dave Walgren fan. Let's be clear on that. So he has that benefit. He also has the benefit of being the prosecutor in a case like this, wearing the white hat. And with the failure of the defense, he had all the cards.
All right, coming up, Hal Eisner and his team of legal experts analyze today's closing arguments.
Yeah, he had a lot of passion, but not a lot of substance.
And a producer inside the courtroom describes the jury's reaction to each side. Next.
The Michael Jackson